A large-scale trough is digging into the Great Lakes and upper Midwest this morning, with a surface low and associated front progressing southeastward across the southeastern US. At the same time, high pressure is building into the region behind that front. This pattern is driving two key effects for the southeast. One, the advection of drier, cooler air behind the front. Two, an enhanced pressure gradient ahead of and behind the front, particularly in near coastal zones. Overall, moisture is modest, forcing weak, and the predominant air masses are evolving from moist to increasingly dry across the region. Southeast, general, frontal progression and impacts. Across the broader southeastern corridor, the cold front is approaching or has just crossed many zones. Ahead of it, low-level moisture remains sufficient for patchy fog overnight or early morning, especially inland. As the front ushers in the drier air mass, humidity drops and skies clear, allowing for radiational cooling and increased lapse rates. The building surface ridge behind the front supports northwesterly to northerly flow, lowering dew points significantly and reducing convective potential. In coastal and marine zones, the tightening gradient between the departing low and the incoming high drives, increasing onshore, northeasterly winds, seas building, and marine hazards. Pilots should monitor the changing pressure gradient and wind shear potential near the front and in the transition zone. Mechanisms in focus, frontal forcing, and transition of air masses. The cold front is the pivotal feature. Its passage switches the region from a moist, light wind regime to a drier, higher pressure, stronger gradient regime. In Florida, the front remains south of the peninsula today, but advances toward into the state, allowing fog and isolated showers ahead, then drying out post-passage. Moisture advection and subsidence. Ahead, residual low-level moisture fuels patchy fog or interior showers. Behind, subsidence beneath the upper trough and mixing of NW flow push drier air aloft downward, capping convective growth and dropping dew points. Pressure gradient and winds. As the high builds, the stiffening pressure gradient drives stronger winds. This is most critical for marine and coastal operations. In Georgia, the dry air mass and wind bring fire weather potential. In Florida, near the coast, the onshore easterly gradient builds seas and rip current risk. Radiational cooling and diurnal range. Clear skies and dry air allow efficient nighttime cooling. Particularly inland Georgia and parts of North Florida will see large drops in overnight lows as moisture and clouds are removed. Geography and climatology. Florida's peninsular shape exposes it to both Atlantic and Gulf influences. The narrowing landmass enhances sea breeze interactions and interior versus coastal differences. Inland Georgia benefits from more continental influences, where dry air mass effects are stronger and timing of frontal passage sharper. Operational takeaways for pilots and meteorologists. Prepare for patchy to dense fog early this morning across interior Florida, especially north-central zones, and in parts of coastal Georgia/Florida prior to frontal passage. After frontal passage, humidity drops significantly. In Georgia, dew points may fall well into the 30s to 40s, RH into the 20s to 30% range. Implications for aircraft performance and fire weather vigilance. Marine operations along Florida's coast should anticipate increasing onshore northeasterly winds, seas building later in the week, and elevated rip current risk today and onward. Aviation across Georgia and inland Florida should see clear, VFR skies, light winds, and strong radiational cooling overnight, though pilots should remain alert to nighttime temperature drops and possible turbulence during mixing or transition phases. Flight planning must account for the changing pressure gradient, increasing winds, and the potential for shallow low clouds or fog pre-dawn. Post-frontal stability will stabilise conditions, but also bring stronger surface winds, especially near coasts and ridges. In summary, for today, the southeast is transitioning into a drier, cooler regime. Florida remains marginally moist ahead of the front, but drying rapidly. Georgia is well into the drier regime. The primary hazards are early morning fog inland, rip current/coastal winds in Florida, and low humidity with possible fire weather triggers inland Georgia later in the week. Enjoy the relative quiet of the flow today, but remain alert for the shift in winds, moisture, and pressure gradients.